covering a lot of different things tonight, and we have a wonderful panel that will be sharing information about recruitment with all of you all. I'd like to start by introducing myself. I'm Elizabeth Bailey. I'm the Director of Membership for the fraternity, and I am a Delta Rho Kappa from the University of Mississippi, affectionately known as Ole Miss. I obviously am very familiar with big Southern recruiting chapters, but also I'm very familiar with recruitment all over the country as I oversee all 137 chapters, soon to be 138, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Allison?
Hi, ladies. I'm Allison Kostek. I am one of Elizabeth's assistants, and I was an active Kappa at Delta Lambda, Miami University of Ohio. It's a chapter about 160 members, and it's also a deferred recruiting chapter. And as one of Elizabeth's assistants, I work with the northern half of the country's chapters, assisting them. And there's also another assistant, Libby White, who handles the southern half of the country, and unfortunately she's unable to join us this evening. I do want to let you know that if you have any questions throughout the webinar, if you go over to your webinar dashboard, towards the bottom there's a questions section, and you can go ahead and type in any questions you have for us. And if we don't answer your question during the webinar, we do have some time reserved at the end to go through those. And if it's a specific question to a specific campus, we may follow up with you directly after that. We have your email address that you registered with, so we can get a hold of you that way.
Lori?
Hello, I am Lori McDonald. I serve the fraternity as the NPC alternate, NPC delegate alternate. And so in that capacity, I work as a campus resource for some Panelists, mostly in the western United States, in Utah, Nevada, and Northern California. And I also serve as a resource for Kappa chapters in the Midwest, if they have Panhellenic questions or issues. And I did my undergraduate work at the University of Utah, and I'm from Delta Eta chapter, which is about a chapter of the size of 80, and is at a large public research institution.
Allie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Allie Vukov, and I graduated from Michigan State University, Delta Gamma chapter. I just finished up a year serving the fraternity as a leadership consultant and had the very good fortune of visiting about 40 chapters during the year and seeing many of those chapters during recruitment. My school, Michigan State, was a Big Ten school with a chapter of about 130 with a fall recruitment. And this fall, I will have the very good fortune of serving the fraternity as a chapter consultant for our newest chapter here in New York City. I also have a Panhellenic background as serving as the Panhellenic president when I was still in college.
And Val?
Well, I'm probably the one that's the most grassroots of the group. I am Val Holman, and I serve as the recruitment advisor at the University of Alabama, which is the school that I attended many years ago, and it is Gamma Pi.
Great, thanks. So let's get started. I think one of the things that throws people off the most is a lot of the terminology is completely new. And sometimes people think, what has Kappa done? They've come up with all these crazy new terms, and I want to clarify that it's not a Kappa thing, it's an NPC thing.
I can confirm that.
Excuse me?
Lori, I can confirm that. All of the 26 NPC groups are using this new terminology, as well as campuses across the country.
And Lori, do you remember about when we started using this, like 10, 15 years ago?
Yes, I would say late 90s was when we were asking all of the campuses to move to this type of terminology.
Yeah, so this is across the board. Everyone's using this terminology. So rush is no longer rush. It's recruitment. And we no longer have rushees. They're potential new members, or PNMs. It's a bit of a mouthful, but you get used to it after a while. The parties are now called events, and a pledge is called a new member. Now, one term that some of you all may remember when you were in school was suicide, and suicide basically meant that, for example, if you went to 3 houses on the last round, the preference round, and you only wanted to choose one, on your preference card, then you were actually suiciding is what they called. We have done away with that terminology. It's now single intentional preference. And then there's informal rush, and we now call that continuous open bidding or COB. And many of our campuses, it is really recruitment all year round. It's not just one big fall recruitment. It's just kind of a sense of always gathering new members. So the next thing we're going to look at is recruitment by the numbers. The number of P&Ms going through recruitment continues to go up. I started this position 3 years ago as Director of Membership, and that's about the time that the economy started to tank, and I wasn't really sure what it was going to look like as far as our numbers, but I can tell you Greek life is alive and well on all of our campuses, and the numbers just keep going up and up. Our new member classes are huge. The largest new member class last year was 105 new members, and you're reading that correctly and you're hearing me correctly. And that does also happen to be our largest chapter in Kappa, but we have many other chapters that have new member classes of 80, 90. It's not uncommon. We have 36 chapters altogether that have new member classes of 50 or more. So let's start with the very beginning of recruitment, and it all starts with the reference process. When I was creating this webinar a couple of weeks, actually a couple months ago, I developed all the slides on the reference process. I thought, well, goodness, this is rather elementary. Do people even want to know about this? And then last month I was visiting my childhood best friend who was a Kappa Alpha Theta, whose daughter's going through recruitment this fall. And I said, well, it's time for me to write her Kappa reference. I need all her information. And she looked at me and she said, what do you mean? And I said, you know what I mean? And she said, no, I don't know what you mean. I said, I need her photo, I need her resume, I need all sorts of information so I can complete the reference. And when I realized this friend of mine, who I thought was going to be very savvy on references, didn't know, then I realized probably many of our Kappas also did not know this as well. We do have a new reference form that was developed last year. Instead of one page, it's now a two-page reference form, and it focuses on our core values of leadership, scholarship, and friendship. The reference form basically serves as an introduction to the chapter so they can start getting to know a little bit more about the potential new member. For the reference process, I really need to emphasize that more is not necessarily better. 2 or 3 good references are better than 15 references. I know a couple of years ago I got a call from an aunt who was very disappointed that her niece had been released from a Kappa chapter. And she said, we tried not to overdo it. We only sent 11 references. And as soon as she said that, I thought, you just overdid it. Sometimes too many references can actually backfire. The chapters will actually feel undue pressure, and their response is digging their heels and not even want to get to know the potential new member. So focus on a few good ones, and don't try and get the whole world to write a reference. As far as what to send, you want to send the completed membership reference form, and this is located in the spring issue of the Key, or it's on the Kappa website in the Write a Reference section. Right when you open the website, you'll see that. You can open it up either in a Word document where you can just basically drop in all the information, or a PDF file. And you'll want to attach a current photograph of the potential new member. I know probably some of you all might remember in the dinosaur days where we actually had opaque projectors and would flash photos of the potential new members so we could have spots on them and start identifying them and getting to know them that way. It's a little bit more sophisticated these days, and they use PowerPoint, but you'll want a current photograph. And in addition to the reference form, I also want to kind of encourage that a letter that is signed with your chapter name and initiation year is also considered a valid reference. So it does not have to be the official form. A letter serves that purpose as well. Sometimes I'll hear people in different parts of the country refer to the reference and then letters of support. that's something cultural in different parts of the country. That is not a CAPA thing. As far as CAPA is concerned, a reference is a reference is a reference. So we don't have letters of support. As far as a little bit more about what to send, the reference form has a section now to expand on the potential new members' qualifications. And it's really focusing again on leadership, scholarship, and friendship. What I'm going to tell you is fill out what applies. Don't feel like you have to fill out every part of that. I did a reference probably last month, and in some areas, the potential new member was just absolutely outstanding. And in other areas, there was nothing bad, but there was nothing just stellar about it. And I just really focused on the areas that she was really strong. She would make a wonderful CAPA. I'm sure her Chi Omega mother would rather not, but she would make a wonderful CAPA. And so it was a good reference, but I didn't fill out every single area. The other thing is provide suggested topics of conversation. What we're trying to do with the reference form is give the chapter women some things to talk about with potential new members beyond the standard questions of what's your major, where's your hometown, and what dorm are you living in. So it could be that the potential new member played club soccer. That would be a good thing to include. It could be they've traveled internationally and they love to talk about their travels. But just whatever kind of things, hobbies, interests, they might love to cook. It could be all different kinds of things, but provide those, and the chapter women will really take that information and use it. There's also a section that basically asks what type of person should a potential new member be matched with. You know, is the potential new member more of a leader type, more scholastic? Are they just a really fun person and more socially oriented? The chapters really take that information, some of the chapters, especially some of the large recruiting chapters, and really are pretty sophisticated now in matching the potential new member with the right person in the chapter to make sure there's a really meaningful connection. I always think of a gal who was actually a leadership consultant with CAPA several years ago, and she happened to be a multiple Theta legacy. She also was about 6 foot tall and a little bit more reserved in her personality. And when she went to the Theta house on her campus, she happened to be paired up with this girl who was probably 5 foot tall, and they weren't even able to have good conversations because they weren't matched right. They couldn't even hear each other during their rounds. Now, as it turns out, Theta's loss was Kappa's gain. She wound up being the chapter president for Kappa and then a leadership consultant. But those kind of things happen, and we want to try and get the right fit. I think also if you can think in the reference form to really come up with good descriptors that will really resonate with the chapter women. The woman who wrote my reference many years ago, she shared with me what she put in the reference, and one of the things she said is I had a stick-to-itness quality about me, and I suppose that's true since I'm still involved with the fraternity 30 years later. So as far as who can send a reference, any alumni member may submit references. In addition, active members may write a reference for a PNM except to her own chapter. I would say ideally it is better if a mother finds a friend or other family member to submit a reference for her daughter. The perception is better from the chapter's eyes. And then the other thing that's different for probably some of you all is that you may not be aware, but this has been going on for about 20 years. On some of our campuses, they receive absolutely no references at all. And so the chapter is able to endorse references for women that they really like, that they do not have to have a reference from an alum. That's always an option for them. As far as where to send the references, the addresses are available on the CAPA website in the Write a Reference section. And some of your communities may have an area alumni reference chairman, which can be very helpful with the entire process. And that can be great to send it through the reference chairman. But I also want you to know you can always send references directly to the chapter. And one of the things I'll say as you're helping your daughter get ready, and I'm hoping also from a Panelists standpoint that you all are gathering references for all the other NPC groups that are on that campus. But I would really encourage you is to make it as easy as possible for the women who are writing the references. The ones that I have appreciated the most are the moms who have literally given me the resume, the photograph, and a stamped envelope with the address of where the reference is supposed to go. On a lot of the campus websites, you can go into Greek Life, and they will have a list of all the addresses for all the NPC groups where the references need to be mailed to. It's just one more step that will probably help ensure the reference getting where it needs to go. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you want to receive an acknowledgement, that's not just an automatic thing, but you'll see on the bottom of the reference form, you can send a self-addressed stamped envelope, ask them, send that with the reference form, or in the alternative, you can select the box requesting an email acknowledgement. And what I would say is if you haven't received an email acknowledgement within like 2 weeks or so, I would follow up with the chapter and just send something. So let's move on to legacies, because that's a topic that's near and dear to everyone's heart. I will say that it is especially something I'm passionate about. My mother and my grandmother were Kappas, so I definitely have memories when I was in high school of my mom pulling out in the back of her dresser drawer this little box that had a little gold key that she wanted to show me. And I still remember that it was a big deal, and she wanted to tell me why it was such a special pin to wear. For Kappa, our definition of a legacy is a sister, daughter, granddaughter, or great-granddaughter of an initiated Kappa. Some of our NPC groups may define legacies slightly differently, but this is our definition. The policies for our legacies is the legacies are voted on at a time determined by the chapter. Each chapter has a time that they vote on the legacies. Some of our chapters will vote after second round, assuming it's like a 4-round recruitment. Others will vote on them after third round. The rationale behind voting on the legacies after second round to decide who will be released at that point is to give the legacy a time to regroup and explore other options on campus. And so she can have a little bit more time to get her mind wrapped around that. The rationale for the chapters that do it after third round is to give the legacy every opportunity and really get to know her. What I will tell you, I have several friends. Some were Kappa legacies, some were legacies for other groups. But just recently I've had conversations with several friends, and they've said, you know, if they had only released me after second round, it would have been so much better. But there was just kind of an added sting. So there's just something I can tell you. If the legacy is released, it really doesn't matter what the time is. It's going to hurt, and there's going to be disappointment. But that's what is going on. The chapters do have a time that they'll vote. A legacy letter will be sent to the PNM's closest Kappa relative, provided the reference has been received 10 days prior to the first day of recruitment. And then if the legacy is invited back to the final round, the preference round, her name must be included on the bid list above the quota break. To protect a legacy's privacy, chapters do not notify her relative if she's not invited to a round or extended an invitation to membership. We allow that information to go to the legacy first. I do encourage you to let the chapters know your relative is going through recruitment. There's a legacy notification form that's available on the website or in the spring issue of the Key. And Val, do you want to kind of chime in as far as the importance of that legacy notification form?
Yes, the legacy notification form is so important. We have a rather large rush or recruitment. I use that. I get in trouble sometimes using that wrong word, but and I'm sure everybody's thinking the same thing. But we have a large recruitment, and there are 2 actives that over the summer have been receiving all of our references, and we get about 3,000 pieces of mail. And so if we have, when we're going through that many references, just mistakes can be made. But if we have that legacy form, when those forms come in, they go in a very special place, and they are reviewed and re-reviewed to make sure that we do have legacy information. We also get legacy information from when they sign up for recruitment through Panelists, but some actives don't indicate that. They think that, if other sororities would know that it will, would not be beneficial for them, it's really best to put that information on the Panelists forms. And so when we get it on the Panelists form, it just gives us another way to check and recheck to make sure that we know all the legacies going through. But it's just every effort that we go through, it's inevitable that sometimes, something will slip through. So every single thing that you can do to help inform us, and the better you could do that, the better it is.
And I'll chime in a little bit more, Val, on that as far as the registration with the Campus Panelists. I really would encourage you to stand there while your daughter is actually filling out the form to make sure everything's done correctly. We've had a couple times where the form was not entered correctly, and the chapter never knew the person was a legacy because it just didn't reflect in the computer database. So that's just something else to just be on the lookout for. Now, some important things to remember about legacies is we are 140 years old and continue to have more and more legacies. Many of our chapters have 60 or more legacies going through recruitment, which means many of our chapters have more legacies going through than they could possibly take, even if they wanted to take all of them. And I think the other thing to really emphasize is that every chapter is different, and your home chapter is probably different from when you were in school, and probably your daughter's different from you. So just kind of keep those things in mind. But I also want to emphasize that every legacy is important and valued. There's no preferential treatment given to a chapter legacy or a sitting sister over a legacy from another chapter. And I certainly can echo that. My grandmother was a Kappa at Beta Pi at University of Washington in Seattle. My mom initiated at Delta Iota LSU and affiliated at Gamma Pi, Alabama. And then I landed at Delta Rho. And I felt just as strong of a legacy tie as an in-house legacy. And I do want to emphasize that no legacy is guaranteed membership, but we do ensure that they're given special consideration. At the end of the day, it needs to be a good fit for both the legacy and the chapter. And I want to emphasize that we need to think panhellenically. All the groups are based on similar ideals and heritage. Several years ago, I was at a Kappa function where there was a luncheon with a Panhellenic focus, and the speaker at the lunch was Marion Williams, who's one of our former fraternity presidents and also former chairman of NPC. And I'll never forget what she said. She started her talk with, "We all like to think Kappa's the best," and it is. But I don't know how to tell you this, but all of our NPC friends think their group is the best too. And that really resonated with me. We're all the same ideal, same heritage, and the same fierce pride. We want to promote Kappa, but also talk up all the other groups. And don't set up a legacy for disappointment by making her feel like Kappa is the only option. My aunt actually was an Ole Miss Kappa, and I do remember her words of advice to me was that I could pledge anything I wanted except Chi Iota, Tri Delt, KD, DG, Phi Mu, AD Pi, and so forth and so on. Now, my mom, on the other hand, actually got me really excited about all the other groups, and I remember just looking, expectantly about all the opportunities. Kappa was one of them, but there were a lot of others, and I thank my mom for giving me that kind of vision for a little bit more. So at this point, I want to take a few minutes and have Val just share from a mother's perspective. And Val, I'll just turn it over to you for a few minutes.
Okay, thanks. Last year, my daughter, Gaden, decided to go to the University of Mississippi and wanted to go through recruitment. She has seen me work with Kappa for years and years and years and knows all about Kappa. just because even as a child, I think she's probably been at some Kappa meetings herself. But when she got ready to go through recruitment, I got a list of all the sororities that were at Ole Miss and found friends to write recs for her. And as people were writing recs, she wrote thank you notes to them. She put together adorable packets that you know, kind of showed her personality, that she had her resume and her pictures and chose the pictures she wanted. And we just had a really good time putting it all together. It was a lot of work, but we did put all that together, both of us together, and she knew most of the women that were writing the recs for her. So she, you know, really thought that that was fun, and we just got to talk about the various sororities. And my mother is an Alpha Chi, my sister is a Theta, and I'm a Kappa, so we, you know, kind of talked all about that and how those different sororities are in different parts of the country and how they were at Ole Miss and who from home we knew were in what school. She went to a school that she knew a few people that were going with her, but she didn't know anyone that was at school there already, and it certainly wasn't any of her really close friends were going to school there. So Ole Miss has a deferred rush. It's kind of an odd thing. They have their recruitment about 6 weeks after the freshmen are at school. So it's not second semester, but it's just kind of in the middle of first semester. So she really got to know all of her friends in the dorm, and then, you know, all of them knew different sorority girls and what have you. So they, you know, there was a lot of talk about that. But although I would love for her to be a Kappa, I think that that would just be a great bond between mother and child. I really knew very little about the Kappa chapter at Ole Miss, and everybody I'd ever met from there I really liked. She knew a lot about some other sororities because when she got to school she met some people from other sororities, all of which, you know, were great national sororities. And so I just really encouraged her to do whatever she wanted to do. I made it clear to her that I did not know, you know, that it was very different now than it was when I was in school, that I didn't really know, you know, which one would fit her best. What fits her best is different than what would fit me best, but that I had loved my sorority life. There's 7 of us that lived in the 3rd floor of the Kappa house that we've been out of school, I don't know, 30 years or something, and we've been going to the beach every year. And so she's grown up with that group. Not that we go with all of our children, we just go with the adults, but the children stay home and know that we're there with the Kappa group. So, so she's kind of grown up with that, and I just emphasized to her that, you know, I just thought that sorority life was just meant a lot to me, and the friends that I made through it meant a lot to me, and that that can happen in really any sorority if you make that happen, and if you stick to it, you know, and try to make that happen after you get out of school. And so I tried to make her just have a very good feeling about sororities in general, and to really try to, during the recruitment process, feel, you know, get to know who she felt most comfortable with, and the people that were younger in the sorority that she would be with longer, who she felt the most comfortable with. And I'm very proud to say that when it all came down to the very end, she wanted to be a Tri-Delt worse than anything in the world, and I would have given my right arm for her to be a Tri-Delt, and that is, in fact, what she ended up pledging. So we were just thrilled, and I just have never been so happy for her.
That's wonderful. And Val, I think you bring up a really good point. Actually, I was talking to my best friend's daughter just last month about this too, is for your daughters to not just be looking at the seniors that they're talking to in the houses and things like that, but really be looking around at the sophomores and also the other people, the other potential new members who are coming back to those houses over and over again, because in reality that's going to be who they're going to be sorority sisters with for the whole 4 years. So when they're at preference round, they really should be kind of looking around and seeing who else is there for preference round and what seems like would be a good fit for them. So now let's move on to academic requirements. For Kappa, our policies, a potential new member, if they're entering in as a freshman, they have to have a B average from high school. If they're an upperclassman, and this also includes deferred recruitment, so those who are recruiting in January, they have to have a C+ average for any completed terms as a full-time student at a college or university to be considered. Now, in extraordinary cases, the chapter can petition the Director of Membership for an exception to these policies. But I want to emphasize it's the chapter who petitions the Director of Membership, not alumni. But what I would say when you're doing the reference form, if there seems to be extraordinary situations for why someone hasn't performed academically as well as you would have thought, give a little bit more explanation so the chapter understands, and then they can have more information to present to request an exception. Life happens, things happen. It could have been that they were in a car wreck. They could have had a family member who had a terminal illness. It could be that they played varsity sports. There could be all sorts of reasons why someone had a little bit less than our expected grades. But I would include some kind of explanation in the reference form so the chapter is fully educated on that. And I also want to make you aware that some chapters are currently on an academic excellence focus program, and they will not be granted any exceptions this year at all. They need to get their grades up overall. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind, that we really do value academics above all. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lori for a while, and she's going to talk about something that's probably very foreign to you, release figures, but no one can explain it better than Lori. So Lori, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. No pressure or anything. The release figure method is something that the National Panhellenic Conference released several years ago, and it has continued to develop after we have added hundreds of campuses to this process. And this, it should really be described as the invitation figure method, because in essence it is how we determine how many invitations a chapter can issue each day of a formal recruitment. So there are some campuses out there that are either have very, very few chapters or are very, very small, and they might not have a formal recruitment process. That's probably another change over the years, is that campuses can have different types of formats. But predominantly, they use a formal recruitment process and have adopted the release figure method. Ultimately, the goal of the RFM, we refer to it as, is to help all of the chapters on a given campus reach quota during the formal recruitment process, and also at the same time give as many potential new members as possible the opportunity to have that fraternity and sorority experience. So it's really to maximize, the matches that are made during the formal recruitment process. And in that effort, really, we have seen tremendously successful results all over the country. Large campuses, small campuses, private, public, all different types of campuses. The RFM has led to seeing most groups on the campus making quota. There have been some cases where a chapter hasn't made quota in over 10 years, and with the implementation of the release figure method, in 1 or 2 years, they start making quota consistently and over the years. And because of that, our smaller chapters are growing bigger, and on campuses, chapters are reaching parity. They are becoming a similar size. And then I think there are less opportunities for people to rely on stereotypes or sizes as an option for deciding on which chapter they join, and more on what the experience is with the women that they're meeting in those recruitment situations. Kind of like what Val said, they're really looking into what is right for them and not necessarily exterior circumstances. So we've been very, very pleased with this. How does it work? It's kind of a nitty-gritty statistical and historical examination, which I won't go into, but every campus that adopts the release figure method is assigned an NPC release figure specialist. And I happen to be a specialist. There are 3 of us from Kappa Kappa Gamma who serve the NPC in this role. And so I get assigned to a particular campus across the country. And sometimes there aren't even Kappa chapters at that campus. I am really an NPC volunteer in that regard. And I do this on a volunteer basis. And what our role is as a specialist is to really take a look at data from a 3-year history of the campus to determine what number a chapter needs to hit in terms of number of invitations each day in order to make quota. And we use a 3-year history to try and look for trends and patterns, and it is a very complex statistical analysis that thankfully was developed by some alumni from MIT, and we trust it a lot. But then we decide what is really the best option for that chapter in order to try and make quota. So what does that mean for you and your potential new member? Ultimately, one thing you have to keep in mind, and Elizabeth has kind of talked about this already, that chapters really no longer have the luxury of inviting back as many potential new members as they want. In years past, it was kind of up to the chapter. You know, they weren't really given any guidance. Maybe select a few if you know that there are some that are not quite the right fit for your chapter. You would maybe release them, and you could just invite back as many as you wanted. And now, chapters actually have a number that they are given. You may invite back this many, and there's an expectation that that is how many they will invite back. Because of the nature of the release figure method, stronger recruiting chapters, and I say stronger recruiting chapters, although recruitment is certainly one metric of how well a chapter is doing, I want to be clear that we have some really, really strong chapters who maybe are not as strong at recruiting as some other chapters on their campus. So it's not an overall strength measure, but just the stronger recruiting chapters release more potential new members earlier in the process, while other chapters invite back all of the potential new members that they can. So a very, very strong recruiting chapter is going to have fewer invitations to issue at the beginning of recruitment. It starts from the very beginning. And those chapters that need more women in the pool in order to statistically make quota will invite back more. So because of that, stronger recruiting chapters often no longer able to extend a courtesy invitation to all of the potential new members that they have a reference on. And I mean, there are some chapters on a campus that can only invite back 50% of the number of women participating in recruitment, and that's on the very first day. So it sounds a little drastic, but the reason behind that is that the women who are potentially going to be matched with that chapter are the ones they carry, and other women can then be released to really look at other options. And just like what Elizabeth was explaining with the timing that a chapter decides on voting on legacies, it's sometimes when you have expectations that are not met, it's painful. But if you're given a lot of different options and you know early on, then you can really keep an open mind. So chapters need to fully abide by the numbers given to them by the RFM specialist and through the Panelists. And many campuses are now using a computerized program to input all of their invitations on a nightly basis or every day. And many of the campuses, are requiring that they cannot invite back more than what is on that number. And many are really strongly encouraged to look at that number and hit it exactly. So in the same vein, the National Panel Conference is really talking to campuses about letting potential new members to maximize their options. Really, if after the first day they think they know which one chapter they want to join, they're really being told, if you can, if you're going from an 8-party day or 8-event day to a 6-event day, even if you only have 2 top choices, we want you to go to all 6 to which you've been invited back, and keep an open mind. So it's really having both the chapters and the potential new members maximizing their options. And that's pretty much what you need to know about RFM. Just a few other reminders about National Panhellenic Conference guidelines that apply to all campuses everywhere. Once recruitment has started, whether it's over a weekend or an entire week or a couple weeks on a campus, really, alumni and active members from other campuses must not contact those chapter members who are involved in the recruitment to inquire about a particular potential new member's progress. They are involved in their recruitment, and they need to concentrate on that. And it's really, we want to protect the privacy of a potential new member to make her own decisions and not to be reported on an ongoing basis. And that's all NPC groups, not just CAPA. In addition, alumni should really not expect to receive any information about the status of a specific PNM or expect to ever receive any information as to where this particular PNM is on a bid list, even if they've written a reference on them or there's a legacy tie. Again, it's protecting the privacy of the PNM. Alumni are prohibited from sending any food or gifts or elaborate flowers or anything like that in any form to the chapter on behalf of a potential new member. And I think this has occurred on some campuses in the past. It's very foreign to other campuses, but again, it's sending the reference and information about a PNM is encouraged and acceptable. But anything beyond that is really can make a chapter feel uncomfortable. It is sometimes not fair to all of the PNMs that are involved in it, and sometimes chapters can feel a little bit of pressure when they're sent that. So it's really a good idea to just not send anything. And it is a violation of Panhellenic recruitment guidelines for alumni, or pardon me, if alumni are doing these things, not just the chapter, that chapter may be sanctioned because of a violation of Panhellenic rules, even if it's our alumni who are doing it. So please keep in mind that it affects the entire chapter on a given campus.
And just to dovetail on this, just about communication with the chapter, I just want to remind you that chapter women are not allowed to talk to alumni during recruitment. So if you send an email or leave a voicemail message and the chapter women are not responding, it's not that they're being rude or disrespectful. They are not allowed to talk. Any questions need to be directed to the membership advisor, to those wonderful grassroots volunteers like Val. Questions need to go to the advisor. And you still need to understand that all discussions during membership selection session are confidential. So the membership advisor is going to be very limited in what she can share. But that's the basic process as far as communication with the chapter. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Allie, and she'll give you really more from the younger perspective information about recruitment. And we'll start with what to wear.
Great. Well, in terms of what to wear during recruitment, I was fortunate to be able to see many different recruitment styles all across the country, and they really do vary, not only from state to state, but regionally as well. I would say, in order to best advise your daughter or granddaughter or family friend who is going to be going through recruitment, it's best to remember that perhaps what you are wearing for recruitment is not necessarily the appropriate thing for recruitment today. Every campus has its own culture, and again, every region as well. Campus Panhellenic is really great about providing information to help make the potential new members maximize their experience and have the best experience possible. Part of this does come in the form of a what to wear guide. Recruitment counselors, even if there's not a formalized guide, recruitment counselors on some campuses, they're called ROGAMAs or ROCIs, they're always available and more than happy to assist a PNM and answer any questions that they have, especially about what to wear, because that definitely can be a question that comes up often. So definitely advise your potential new member to talk to their recruitment counselors if they're having any questions about what to wear. If they say, wear jeans, wear jeans, they're definitely going to be instructing them in the correct and appropriate way. Definitely, I would say it really comes down to comfort. These days are very, very long days of recruitment. There's a lot of recruitment events packed into a short amount of time, and they're really going to want to feel as comfortable as possible, not just in their clothing choice, but also in their shoe choice. A lot of times these PNMs are walking from chapter to chapter, chapter house, I should say, and that can be a little bit of a hike. So whether it's, tossing a pair of flip-flops in their bag, to walk between chapters. That's definitely a common practice that I've seen, but definitely the operative word here is comfort, making sure that they're comfortable in what they're wearing, prepared for a long day in that outfit, and really just comfortable being themselves, letting their own personality shine through in what they're wearing, and really feeling good and confident in what they've selected. Okay, moving along to social media. Social media not only is everywhere these days just on a day-to-day basis, but it is huge during recruitment as well. Facebook, Twitter, they've all become very important tools used during recruitment. As you know, we have a very limited amount of time to get to know each other, for the PNMs to get to know the chapter women and vice versa during the recruitment process. So chapters really are relying on social media to get to know these PNMs just a little bit better. With that, I think it's always very important to remember to advise your PNM to be careful what's posted on their social media and what content they're putting up there. Just as they would want to monitor that for a job interview and interviewing with a prospective employer, it's kind of the same thing going through recruitment. My mom always taught me that a picture was worth 1,000 words, and on Facebook these days we have more than one picture. So definitely being careful as to what's posted there, just to make sure that they're getting the right message across and how they're portraying themselves. There are a ton of different privacy settings and so on and so forth that are available on Facebook. And so definitely, advise them to do that if they're having any doubt. Something that they would be comfortable showing their grandmothers is a good rule of thumb, I think. I'd like to move on next to recruitment rounds. Again, this is something that varies tremendously from campus to campus and also regionally. One thing that is becoming very consistent is the no frills resolution through NPC that most campuses are adopting and putting through. Campuses now are emphasizing more on conversation than on attire and skits and refreshments. The thought here is really to have a chance to get to know each other one-on-one, face-to-face, without the extra frilliness, without the extra distraction, around the conversation. So it really does work out to be advantageous for the chapter and for the PNM alike for them to make sure that they're getting to know each other in the best possible outlet. Some different types of recruitment rounds that are pretty consistent across most campuses. There's usually a philanthropy round, and on that day or for that round of recruitment, those events typically are structured in such that the chapter will inform the PNMs of their national philanthropy and also of their local philanthropy. And this is really a day for chapters to showcase what their philanthropic effort is and all of those different things that make them proud of their service. Another round that's very popular for most chapters is the house tours round. And not every chapter has a house, but if they have a chapter suite or a lodge or just a regular house, this is very popular for chapters to be able to do and showcase their space and really allow the PNM to get a feeling for, could I see myself here? Could I live in these rooms? Could I come to meeting here? So that is another very popular and something that you'll see often from campus to campus. Another thing that we tend to see during a lot of recruitments on different campuses are slideshows, and these typically are just picture shows showcasing the chapter and the chapter women, pictures of them at their philanthropies, pictures of them at different events that they're doing. So really just helping the PNM to get to know the chapter women, because again, it is a very short amount of time. The events are packed in back to back during the day, so any avenue to help the women get to know each other is definitely utilized during those recruitment rounds. But again, they do vary from campus to campus. I would like to talk a little about deferred recruitment. Some of our chapters are deferred recruiting chapters, and with that, there's about a third of our chapters that recruit in January or February. Every campus has different rules regarding contact with PNMs and the chapter during fall semester, so that really does defer to those individual campuses. So definitely if you have any questions about that, contacting the Greek Life Advisor, contacting the Campus Panhellenic is definitely a good way to go. They can advise your PNM on that. Chapters are very familiar with those rules and regulations as well. So they know, what that contact and what those boundaries can be. During that first semester for deferred recruiting chapters, it really is a fantastic opportunity for chapters and PNMs to get to know each other outside of the recruitment space. The PNMs are definitely being watched throughout the semester, but they also have the opportunity to observe the chapter in sort of their natural habitat, their natural surroundings of college life. And it really does provide an awesome open window for these women to really get to know each other and really be able to find what's going to be the best fit for them. I would say the biggest thing for your PNM to remember if she's going through recruitment on a deferred recruiting campus is just to keep an open mind, not listening to what other PNMs are saying, what women in these chapters are saying, even what men on these campuses are saying, fraternity men or otherwise, to really just follow their own instinct and really gather their own opinions about these chapters. So they're going through this with an open mind and making the best choice for them, not based on hearsay or rumors or what they've heard, through the grapevine. So definitely, I would say that's number one, is just helping your PNM to remember to keep an open mind with that. I would say also, it kind of comes back to that social media aspect again. Definitely watching what Facebook content, what Twitter content is going up through the semester, because they will have an entire semester in college where they're finding their niche and, learning that balance between social and different organizations and schoolwork. So definitely making sure that, they're achieving that balance, and also that they're monitoring what content they have up on social media sites. I would say too, academics are number one here as well. Making sure to remind your PNM that academics do come first in our Kappa chapters and in other Panhellenic friends. Those chapters are going to be emphasizing academics as well. Grades do come first. That is, after all, why we're in school. You can't be a Kappa unless you're a collegiate first. So reminding your PNM that they need to really be staying on top of their academics, and chapters will definitely be looking at that come recruitment time, making sure that those PNMs who they're looking at accepting into membership are learning, how to maintain a balance and achieve high academic standing, so they're meeting our Kappa standards. So keeping up their grades, forming their own opinions, and monitoring, their social media and achieving a good balance, I would say, are the big things to remember for your PNM going through recruitment on a deferred recruiting chapter.
Great. Thanks, Sally, so much. I know we've just thrown a whole lot of information out at you. I want to remind you, if you have any questions, you can type them in, and we'll be glad to answer questions for the next couple minutes if there are any questions. In the meantime, I do want to tell you that if any of you all want any offline conversations with me, I'm more than happy to share with you if I know what campus you're looking at, as far as what's just the general legacy culture, how many legacies go through on that campus, that type of thing. Just to give you a general idea, I am more than happy to have kind of back and forth dialogue. So I feel like for moms, the more information you can have on the front end, the better. So I love having that dialogue with moms, so I just encourage you on that. While we're waiting just for a minute or two with Allison to see if there are any questions, if any of the other panelists have any other kind of last-minute things they want to add, now would be a great time. I don't know if you do or not.
The only thing that's constant out there is change, no matter what campus. Just something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And I think, too, it all comes back down to supporting your PNM, whether it's your daughter, your granddaughter, sister, cousin, friend, and just making sure that she knows she has your support and that you are going to celebrate in her Panhellenic success, whether she's wearing a golden key or she's wearing any other symbol of any of our other Panhellenic friends, making sure that she's feeling supported and she knows that you're excited for her, I think is a big one too.
Yeah, I'll tag onto that. I know with my best friend's daughter, who is a Kappa Legacy through the grandmother, who's going through recruitment, as I've told her, my friend, I said, you know, just give me a theme, I can go with it. So I'd love the theme to be the fleur-de-lis and the key and the owl, but I can go with any theme. So I'm ready to buy the gifts and get excited. But of course, it would be much more exciting if it was the owl, the key, the fleur-de-lis. But as long as my friend's daughter is happy, that's really ultimately what matters. So, Allison, do we have any questions?
Yes. The first one is if you've got a legacy that is attending a campus that has deferred recruitment, should you send in the legacy form now or wait until late fall?
I think you need to send it in the beginning of the fall semester, and you know, Allie, if you've got a different opinion, let me know. But what I've seen with a lot of the deferred recruitment chapters, they're preparing for recruitment all fall long, and they'll do legacy reviews throughout the fall. So I think the longer that the chapter can get familiar with the legacy's name and information about her, the better.
And another question is, with a lot of Kappas in the family, who would be the best person to write the recommendation? Should it be a mom or a cousin?
I think it's better if the mom doesn't write the reference, but Val, do you have any opinions on who should write the reference? What do you think is best received? I know you're from a chapter that gets lots of references.
I really think just whoever can articulate is the best way to the chapter, you know, the things about what kind of conversation to have with the person and what her interests are and that type of thing, the better. I don't think that when the chapter actives are going through the references that they look at it and say, oh gosh, her mom wrote that, so, you know, that's a check against her or whatever. I don't think anything like that is done. I just think whoever feels the most comfortable doing it is best. Sometimes I would say that a mom doesn't view the child in the same way as somebody else would that would view the child more like her peers. So I think a best friend's mom or a cousin or something like that may be a better choice than the mom. But if the mom's the only one that we have, I think that's fine too.
Yeah, I agree. Allison, any other questions?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, well, you all have my email address, so you know where to find me. And thank you all so much for taking an hour out of your evening to join us, and we hope it's been helpful for you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.